niġu bil-PC tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-e-sports, programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-e-sports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, e-sports plus. niġu bil-PC tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-e-sport. Programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-e-sports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, eSports Plus.
There's been a lot this season to go and talk about. There has been ups and downs, trials and tribulations, and it all started when we didn't have enough fuel in the car. But from that initial stage, which started all the way back at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps nearly 3 months ago, to where we are today on December 9th, and watching what is going to be a double-header finish to the season. This is Mount Panorama Bathurst, and this is the final round of your World Pro Racing Sprint Series presented by ESTV, the Esports Television Network, along with TVM Sport. We're live on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitch as well. I'm Jake Sperry, Kiri McGinley, along with me for the ride. We talk about championship, a double-header, 120 points on the line here today, and crucially, €300 top prize on a €1,000 prize pool here, Kieran. The job is very simple: to get this done with a race to spare for the championship leader, Amedeo Castorino, over Luke Whitehead. He only has to outscore Luke Whitehead in the first of the 2 races today by just 2 points.
Yeah, and it seems relatively simple at that stretch, doesn't it? You know, just outscore your rival by 2 points. That's all you have to do. But as we always know, when we go into a championship deciders, it's never quite as easy as it sounds. Yes, for Amedeo, he's got himself that 58-point buffer going into tonight's double-header. But that means if something befouls him in the early stages of race 1, well, that opens it up for race 2. All Luke Whitehead can do is go out there, maximum pace, and try and score the full points and see what happens to Amedeo. And in fairness as well, that battle for P2, if it were to come to it, is still not over. Wojciech Neuwirth has really jumped up the standings. His strong showing last time out 2 weeks ago puts him 3rd place in the standings. Sebastian Apostol as well in 4th place. A point separate 3rd and 4th. And Oscar Saristo, just that outsider rank there of 3rd place in the championship. But, I mean, we come to the final round, 2 races at Mount Panorama Bathurst. I've said it before, Jake, and I'll say it again. This is probably one of my favourite circuits to race at. You literally start from the grid and you head to hell corner. I mean, there's something beautiful about this circuit.
Something beautiful about saying that hell is the least of your worries on this track as well, which goes to show just how great this circuit is. Of course, when you talk about this track, there is the top of the mountain, Peterbrook skyline, and dropping down the S's section and through one of the most famous descents in all of motorsport. This holds 2 very crucial runs in terms of the real world, Kieran. It has the Bathurst 1000, which is Australian touring cars and supercars' most important face. We can see the Ferrari and the Mercedes there. dropping down the hill, but also holds the Bathurst 12 Hour in February. It's one of these unique tracks. Most people don't realise this is a street circuit, and they only race here 6 weeks over the course of a 52-week year, which makes this place really special to race at.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's had its history as well. The circuit layout has remained really unchanged since 1987, and even then that was because they added the chase at the end of the 1986 season. This circuit's really been up and running since 1938, so to only have one major track change in all of those years, you know, we're approaching 90 years of this circuit being really first raced on, first built, first constructed, baptised, whatever you want to call it. This circuit has held a strong place in a lot of hearts. And as you say, the 12 Hours is probably one of the most brutal endurance races you can come across at such a narrow circuit. It basically becomes a street circuit almost, with the walls so close in the middle section of the lap. Plenty of undulation. As you said, the dipper there as you head your way through the S's and the skyline is really one that catches people out. There is not a lot of room for error. And even as you head into Forest's Elbow, where one year a tree was felled onto the circuit. Yeah, this circuit's had a lot of everything. It's had a lot of history, and my goodness, what a way and what a track to round off this season.
What a track, and what a way to end it off with 2 races here. Just taking a look over at the practice times as things go. Amadeo Castorino has not set a time in the number 1 BMW, but a lot of BMWs and Mercedes seem to be the port of call. But what is interesting is what car number 21 has gone for up at the top of the order, has made the decision to go with that Honda NSX, which is quite honestly a left field decision, but we've seen that quite a bit from Luke Whitehead. Not afraid to go for the left field choice.
No, not at all. And sometimes you could settle to whatever your rival does. You can match them, and at that point you might do as well as them. You know, you could hedge your bets and do slightly better. But Luke Whitehead here knows that to win this championship, he needs to do something different. And tonight, that's choosing the Honda. And when it comes to agile, nimble cars, one of the first cars that do come to mind is the Honda. It just seems to be the mainstay of the manufacturer. But take nothing away, because those BMWs are going to be a force to be reckoned with tonight.
I tell you what, they are already, and just looking at the names who are there, 2nd, 3rd and 4th, it looks like we are going to have a bit of interruption ahead of the main championship contenders today, because you've got Sebastian Apostol who's in 4th, but the 2 drivers being Joshua Allen and Victor Nicolai, they are both going to be very interesting. We've seen nothing of Nicolai all season. This is his first run in as he goes through, running down in that BMW, traditional yellow and blue paint dropping down the hill. And then, of course, Joshua Allen, who we had seen a little bit over the course of this season, but, of course, befell himself through a couple of troubles in the mid-part of the season. So what you're saying is you've got 2 unknowns racing right up near the pointy end.
Do indeed, and we love a bit of a venture into the unknown, as Luke Whitehead so far is the only Honda out on track at the moment. Of course, you can only use 2 cars for the season. Oh, sorry, I phrased that wrong. You can use any car you like, but you can only use the same car twice. Did that make any clearer, Jake? I've read it. It made it a lot clearer, didn't it? So you can only use the car of your choice twice, then you have to shake it up, and that's what's brought these different cars and different strategies to each of these different tracks as we head through the calendar. I mean, let's face it, this calendar has really thrown up quite a few, well, different tracks to us. I mean, we were started at Spa-Francorchamps, as we discussed earlier on. Alton Park, again, quite a narrow flowing circuit. We've had Imola, again, quite a narrow circuit, not a lot of room for overtaking there, so qualifying is critical. Kyalami, a very open circuit, but again, lots of undulation there. Kota, a track that's built for overtaking. And now we head here to Mount Panorama, where you've got almost a half permanent circuit, where most of the track is the Conrod Straight, heading in towards the chase there, as we watch on from Asuka Shikanami in a Ferrari tackling the chase now, as we mentioned earlier, built and added to the track for 1987 and has remained at Mount Bathurst. Mount Panorama. I can't mix the two. That's an absolute sin if you do that. Mount Panorama, just a staple in any calendar, and once I see it on the calendar, I know I'm in for a good season.
I see that as well, and it's not often that you get a bad race over at Mount Panorama. It has two different defaults that it often sets itself to. There's the default of everything's going to be close and everyone's going to stay in range, or there's the default of carnage, and carnage often does find itself a way to make its presence known at the mountain, and it is going to be worth keeping in mind. So too is the racing action all the way down for 7th position overall in the standings as well. You can't forget this as well, because Gurgly Conshaba, he's 6th on 172 points. Bernard Bonello is just a point behind on 171. And on the outside looking in, the two drivers who will want to be finding points today, Dylan De Bono and Daniel Stramer, 160 and 156 points. You know, you want to be a part of the prize pool. The goal at the start of the season was finish top 7. They've given themselves a chance to get there.
They have, and being consistent as well is the mainstay of the day. And they'll be looking to try and wrap this season up as best they can. Eventually, you're just going to have your eyes set on scoring as many points as possible and see there that you can just maintain or even gain a couple of championship positions towards the end of the season. As we mentioned as well, that prize pool is up for grabs at the end of this evening, where you decide where it is decided where you finish up, and that €1,000 prize pool is nothing to shake a stick at, that's for sure.
No, it certainly isn't, and we'll find out who is going to be the main players of the game tonight here from Mount Panorama Bathurst today as they are driving about. We're going to step aside for just one moment here with World Pro Racing. When we come back, we will have the initial phases of qualifying, where we'll see who will get themselves up on pole position for the races today here at this legendary racetrack.
Niġu bil-PC tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-esports, programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-esports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, esports Plus. niġu bil-pisi tagħna u l-monitor tfih daqsiex għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-e-sport. Programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-e-sports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, eSports Plus.
Initial practices then have been put into the books, but the next focus is qualifying. Qualifying has held a strong significance for a very long time as people have gone out through the seasons. They know that it's important to qualify well. It is not the be-all and end-all to win races, but when you consider, say, for example, on a Formula One aspect here and how important qualifying is, the best drivers in the world have a 60 to 70% conversion rate from pole position to victory. And it's that sort of conversion rate which in sim racing, when it's a lot closer, you get a lot more races, you get a lot more practice around the circuits, it becomes even more important to convert from strong qualifying positions to strong race results.
Absolutely, and as you say, with more time, more events that these drivers can get themselves behind, it does mean that the top end of the field gets closer and closer and closer, and we have seen that. Luke Whitehead battling back against Amedeo Castorino, but he finds himself at the moment 58 points behind going into tonight's double header. Now, that is going to favour Castorino, who himself has been imperious throughout this season. He really has done everything that could have been done to put himself in this really strong position heading into the final two races. He's put the pressure on Luke Whitehead to turn up and score the many points possible that he might be able to score. As you mentioned earlier as well, not to forget and not to rule out the top three battles, or I should say the third place battle as well. Wojciech Neuwirth and Sebastian Apostel, 211 and 210 points respectively. Oscar Saristo, fifth place in the championship on 198. You've got Gerli Gonzabo on 172. He's in sixth place. And rounding off the prize pool positions in seventh place, Bernard Bonello with 171. And that's going to be important. It's the top 7 positions that get themselves a little piece, or at least a piece, of the prize pool. So finishing in that top 7 would be a target for many that are currently sitting outside it. The likes of Dylan Deboto on 160, Daniel Stromae on 156, Catalin Tufaneo on 121, Edwin Law on 119. They'll all be looking to try and finish in that top 7 whatever happens tonight, and with 120 points on the line tonight, you never know what's going to happen.
No, you never truly know, and that's what makes this place really interesting. Just taking a look then over at turn number 2 out on circuit, the Quarry Bend, and the long right-hander, and then up over at the top of the hill, that big long descent down the hill, which has been so vital, so crucial for a number of years of deciding who can tame this mountain and who can't. And there is a sort of understanding when you drive around this place is that you can never truly have a 100% lap. It's never all together, Kieran. You have yourself either a case where you can attack parts of this circuit, but when it comes to the mountain, especially when it comes to race time, you have to respect that section of road. It's pretty much one track along the mountain.
Absolutely, although if you try and say that nobody can have that perfect lap, well, you miss out on the Bathurst folklore of the Lap of the Gods by the New Zealander Greg Murphy, who managed to, back in 2003, in the, I believe it was the Australian Supercars, managed to dip under 2 minutes and 7 seconds, which was unheard of at the time. Ignore the fact that Luke Whitehead went under 2 minutes in his Honda earlier on in practice. But at the time in 2003, with the machinery he had, that was the perfect lap at Bathurst. And in terms of other machinery that have followed 20 years later, it's safe to say that we might see a lap that's quicker than that, of course, but for a bit of machinery, that mechanical sympathy that Greg Murphy had in 2003 to get that car and strangle every bit of performance out of it, we might never see a lap on edge like that for a long, long time. That could all change tonight, though, of course.
And the big difference between an Australian touring car and these GT3 vehicles, how close do you want to get, as we take a little look then at the stewarding room over back at World Pro Racing's arena, as they have themselves a good look at exactly what they need to be doing today. They've got live stewarding available to them, and they'll have a look at cameras that we will not have the ability to look at here as we watch throughout the course of qualifying and the two races here today. But the one difference is downforce, and these GT3 vehicles, they're not as fast in a straight line as an Australian touring car. An Australian touring car can reach speeds of up to 280 kilometers an hour along the straights. The big key when it comes to these GT3 cars is they've got that downforce. That big spoiler on the back gives them the opportunity to really plant the car down through the middle sector of the lap, and that's where they gain all the time because they're not having to deal with as much over the top of the mountain.
So you're right, downforce plays a huge part of that. The massive rear wing, the front splitter as well, which guides the air across in a most efficient way possible to generate that extra grip. The higher, the faster you go through these corners, and that'll do well for you through the mid-speed corners, coming in towards the chase, and such as the Solomon Park, Reed Park, that sort of snaking section where Bravery and Aero is right at its limit. But, as you mentioned before, the Skyline, the S's, and most importantly, the Dipper. I can't tell you the amount of times I've seen a driver, I've been myself a driver, and got it all wrong at the Dipper. All you need is just that light kiss of the wall, and you're the wall's mercy on the other side. It really is the finest of margins, as we see Amadeo Castorino then second place at the moment is Apostle, who's currently topping the timesheets on a 2 minutes 0.4. Of course, lots of time still left in qualifying, although a 2 minute lap here to set your hot lap means there's not a lot of time on the clock. I mean, there's enough time for 4 hot laps if you've really got your pace about you and your wits about you, as we see Luke Whitehead now tackle Forrest's elbow back onto the power, onto the Conrod straight, and might have a little bit of tow from the Mercedes up ahead of him. We'll have to wait and see. He's yet to set a lap, and he's on it now.
Yeah, he certainly is. He's getting a little bit of help from the 90 in front. That's Gurgly Conchabo in the Mercedes there. So definitely Luke Whitehead will be getting a little bit of help in that Honda on the brakes at the chase and looking to put that first time in on the board. In sim time, just ticked over 5:05. This track's only going to get colder as it goes on, and it becomes an interesting game then towards the end of this opening qualify or this qualifying session. Who can get as close as they can? Take a driver's eyes view over the line for Luke Whitehead, who gears up for a flying lap then around this track. On the brakes then for Hell Corner, trying to get it nicely pivoted in. Use as much as you can on the exit because you need the run up the mountain straight, which effectively just means sit back in your seat, relax, and make sure that you make the braking point exactly where you want it to, because it's going to be a lot later than you expect. Uphill braking zone into Quarry. 2-3 attempts there to get the car pointed into the corner from Luke Whitehead, over that curb on the outside, and immediately up to the cutting here. Double apex left, turns 3 and 4. get it turned in at turn 4, as close to the wall as you can, right up against the wall, through the Griffin's Mount, and then you've got the Reed Park right and left, which comes through this pit, then a path, a little bit of correction of oversteer through the middle, as now heading through the metal grates.
Heading through the metal grates then as we head our way to pretty much the peak of the mountain, just trying to turn your way through into McPhillamy Park and trying to keep the power in as much as possible. Heading down the hill now in towards the S's, and now here comes the dipper here. So easy to get this one wrong, and if you clip that wall on the inside on the left, you are at the wall's mercy on the other side. Continuing now down the hill, you're going downhill as you apply the anchors in towards Forest's Elbow. Again, so much of an invitation for understeer as you now go through the revs, up the gears, heading down Conrod Straight, and this is really your time to gather your thoughts now. There's still that undulation to contend with. You head over the blind crest, and then as you head downhill, you're greeted with the chase. Use that little bit of extra tarmac on the left hand side to open up the corner and carry that speed through full throttle on the anchors as we tackle the chase. Again, a bit of a blind apex. You're really putting the faith in as you put the power down and hoping you've got the car positioned right. Heading our way now once again down the hill in towards Murray's Corner, the final corner. Use a bit of curb on the entrance and the exit for good measure, and that is a lap of Mount Panorama, and for Luke Whitehead it's good enough right now for provisional pole position.
He did that and he clipped the wall coming out of the Forest Elbow, which just goes to show you how much of the road he was trying to push. Alexander in second, Casarino in third, Joshua Allen, the Scot, has jumped up then into 4th position, and it is a very, very telling day. It is Honda that leads from a slew of now 6 BMWs, because Wojtek Neuwirth has just moved up into 7th position. So it is pretty crammed up there. Bernard Bonello in the Merc, trying to get it over the line. Goes 13th fastest, only 2.5 seconds off the pace. This also is one of those circuits here, Kieran, where either you've got it or you've not.
Absolutely right, and it's a lot to contend with as well. You really have to be in tune with this circuit or it will chew you up and spit you out. Sebastian Apostel then making his way onwards towards the chase, and again, it's a lot to think about. This is your chance to unwind, if you like, before you do it all over again. It's the longest straight on this circuit as you head through the right-hander and then onto the anchors in towards the chase, and there's still that undulation to contend with, and we saw it as we were riding on board with Luke Whitehead. How many parts of the track here are simply blind apexes? You are relying on your own driving technique and the positioning of the car. You have to really learn this circuit off by heart. You have to know it like the back of your hand, as Sebastian Apostel puts it onto the front row of the grid there with a 2:01.97. That is going to send a little bit of a message to Amedeo Castorino. Meanwhile, here's Luke Whitehead for round 2 as he makes his way now down towards Murray's Corner.
Well, has Whitehead found more improvements? He had to gather the car a little bit on his initial lap as he crossed the line. Oh, you bet he does. Oh, you bet he does, and then some. Think he only had a 59.9 when it came to practice. Well, he's just decided, you know what? You're getting a bit close, everyone. 59.6 is half a second quicker than the field.
Absolutely massive lap time from Luke Whitehead. You know how I said you all have to be in tune with this circuit? Well, Luke Whitehead looks like he lives here at the moment. That's how quick his lap times are at the moment. He's 7/10 up on his championship rival in Amedeo Castorino. Now, of course, the pressure really is on Luke Whitehead coming into tonight. Amedeo has got a 58-point lead, so it's not as if it's critical that he has to finish roundabouts in the same postcode as Luke Whitehead, but it probably would be in his best interest to at least be a position or two behind at the very best. But 7/10 behind, that is a lot of time for Amedeo to find.
It's a lot of time, and you also have to consider that Amedeo Castorino doesn't necessarily need to find 7/10 of a second. He needs to find 2 finishes here tonight to make that happen. As we look at Sebastian Apostel, 4 minutes left in qualifying, the 33 in second position. You're considering it is 58 points, the margin at the top of the championship here. It is 60 points for a victory. 4th place is worth 45 points. So you count 2 4th places in the racing today, that's 90 points, and 90 points, the maths, adds up more than 60. Let's say Luke Whitehead wins both races, 120 points. You only need to score 62 points today, which is the equivalent of a 9th and a 10th place finish.
Yeah, so again, as we were saying, the pressure really is on Luke Whitehead coming into tonight. For Castorino, 7/10 of a second, as you were saying, is good enough for 4th fastest as Oscar Shikanami goes up to 16th fastest. Here is Amedeo Castorino, championship leader heading into the night in the BMW, and 7 of the top 8 all BMWs, maybe a sign of things to come. But Luke Whitehead in a Honda is into the 59. So too actually is Apostle as well, just dipping into the 59s on that last lap. For Amedeo Castorino though, it was a 2-minute .3 on that last lap. Still stays in 4th place.
Yep, still does, but crucially Apostol gets within 3/10 of a second. Now here's Oscar Saristo in 9th position, the second of the Mercedes out here, and is right in around the likes of Gurgly Conchavo and Dylan de Bono. And I think it is rather interesting to talk about the fact that most of the drivers who are 5th, 6th, 7th and on back in that championship, Daniel Stramer you can put in the mix as well, as a little bit different in the BMW, but most of them in and around that top 10 are looking at this battle, and they are in Mercedes. And you have to say that with 2 minutes left in qualifying, the choice to go to the Mercedes is a simple one, is that they want security out there on circuit. That BMW, a little bit different though, Kieran, because of course that is one of the few cars in the world that has been designed first in sim racing to be a prototype and a testing ground for real world racing. That's what makes the BMW such a unique car.
Absolutely, and we've had before steering wheels designed with sim racing first in mind, brought then to the circuits and tracks around the world, and now we get an entire machine, all guts and all, being designed in sim racing, tested in sim racing, and brought to tracks around the world. Great to see it. It just shows you how important sim racing has become, not only in developing drivers but also now developing new machinery and new cars to play with in motorsport. It is absolutely brilliant to see the two worlds merging and cohabiting at this point. It's great to see.
It really is. Joshua Allen then makes a run down the hill, 1 minute left as he races through, and look, he's even tucking down like he's a go-karter, trying to get more speed out there of the car there for just a moment. But it looks like in terms of his work then, hands off, he'll be looking to gear up for a flying lap and absolutely make that all work. But at least for the moment, it's going to be about, well, what's manageable. Castorino's just moved up, 3rd fastest. He's found an extra 10th of a second. So Joshua Allen, he's got to find 2/10 of a second out there really to feel comfortable. Luke Whitehead, it's getting a bit busy around him, so to speak.
Slightly busy. They do know it's qualifying, don't they, Jay?
No, I don't think so. I think they're out there trying to get a track position and see what they can do. So Whitehead here is going to get a great run on the Ferrari off of the exit. I think that's Simon Vajarek there, who he's just managed to get through the 51. Oh no, he's going to have a fight, and Whitehead is going to be pushed off, and that might be trouble for the Ferrari of Vajarek as the checkered flag comes out, because the stewards might want to have a look at that coming through towards the end. Here's Amedeo Castorino then, and he knows he's got 6/10 of a second to find if he wants to go through. Apostol can't improve, nor too can Jack Alexander. So for Castorino, up over the hill, now at the forest elbow, he's got a motor here as he has to just try and gather it all back up together on the exit there, Kieran.
He has indeed, as he makes his way now down towards the chase. Of course, this is going to be an important lap. Can he find any more time? He has found time, so he's put himself into 3rd place with his last lap and his last attempt. Now, oh, that's a big snap there, going through the right-hander. Fair play to Amedeo Castorino. He managed to catch that in the gravel, but that is a very sketchy moment. This close to the race start, that's not the sort of thing he would be wanting going into tonight, but he'll be hoping that that qualifying lap, and so wow, that's Joshua Allen. That's gone as well, so lots of rear ends getting all sorts of out of shape on the BMW end. But yeah, that's going to be maybe a lap for Castorino to look back at. Oh, that's
Yeah.
a big hit at the wall from Edwin Law.
Well, he already had his lap. He got across the line before or just after the checkered flag. So Kirsten Bay has won, and then you've got Nikolai as the other driver out there who could maybe improve on a lap time in the number 34. So Bay had down in 17th position, nearly 5 seconds off the pace. He's only got to find 100th though to move up a position as he battered the curb over at the chase, trying to get as much as he could out of it. So there is still that to play in mind. Victor Nikolai behind will be looking for time all over the grass, trying to get it over the line. 204.7, so that one will not improve for Victor Nikolai. He'll make that run over towards the line, and that will be the checkered flag out then in qualifying, and everybody all sorted together. But Kieran, once again, Luke Whitehead's proven that he has got the natural pace, but the issue he's had, same issue he's had all season, he's been on the back foot, and he hasn't found a way to really channel in and eat into Amedeo Castorino, who has been the ultimate consistency driver.
Absolutely, and it comes to this scenario now where Amedeo Castorino can consider it a bit of a Prost drive, for lack of a better word, to end this season. He knows he doesn't have to win the next 2 races. He just has to do enough. So now he might switch his racing brain for a more mathematical, methodical, strategic brain to say, well, actually, I don't need to win these races. I just need to pick up, as you said, enough points, a 9th and a 10th place equivalent, to pick up this championship. I don't need to throw everything at this, although that loss at the back end, just before the chase, in towards that flying right-hander, might not have done too well with his confidence. Have to say, though, a big shout out to Sebastian Apostel. Within 0.3 of a second of Luke Whitehead, only 2 drivers getting and dipping into the 159s in that qualifying session. So that was a fantastic lap for Sebastian, and that will help him as well in his battle for what he will hope he might have a chance of P2. And you can't rule that out, because he starts tonight 1 point behind Wojtek Neuwirth in 4th place in the standings with 120 points up for grabs. He could really either progress into the top 3, maybe even challenge as a runner-up spot. You just never know.
Well, this is the thing for Luke Whitehead. He will understand that behind him, Sebastian Apostel does have reason to battle with him over the course of the early laps. And this is also the sort of circuit where you have to be switched on all the time. You can't just switch off and say, oh, I'm okay, because every corner on this circuit has a way, and has had a way in the past, of just biting back. So when it comes to how you drive around this track, is there truly no such thing as dialing the wick down to 95% at this circuit in particular?
This is the thing. It's a dangerous concept, because you can back off slightly and save the car, but you do let complacency creep in. And even if you're not going at 95%, it means you're not really at full concentration. You might be taking corners slightly slower, compromising lines as well. It is, as you said, one of those circuits you have to be on the money in terms of your concentration. You have to keep your whips about you as well, heading in towards especially the middle section as you climb the mountain. With those walls only millimeters away, you have to be millimetrically perfect in terms of lines and in terms of keeping those walls just about far enough away. Maybe a bit of paint will scratch them on your race, but you'll be hoping that's just enough contact you'll make.
Yeah, certainly do hope that. If you haven't already, though, ladies and gentlemen, you can like, share, and subscribe here to World Pro Racing for more amazing content, be that on Facebook, on Twitch, and on YouTube as well. This is the World Pro Racing Sprint Series, powered by ESTV, the Esports Television Network. We're going to step aside for just one moment. When we come back, we're racing at Mount Panorama, the first of 2 that's coming up.
Niġu bil-PC tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-esports, programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-esports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, eSports Plus. niġu bil-PC tagħna u l-monitor fih daqsiex għas missieri ma kien jifilħu. Ħanerġa' ninsa għax weħlet li ma nistax kif ukoll. Wasal iż-żmien li nħolqu programm dedikat tal-esports, programm fejn ħanitkellmu fuq ħafna affarijiet, edukazzjoni, saħħa, l-industrija tax-xogħol, però l-iktar ħaġa importanti li nippromovu l-esports pajjiżna għaliex intom kapaċi. Mela tinsewniex, eSports Plus.
So Luke Whitehead put himself head and shoulders above the field, but that is no guarantee for the results of what will happen today over the course of racing at Mount Panorama, Bathurst. It's 30 minutes in terms of racing, a lap which is fluctuating around 2 minutes. Expect it to be a 15-lap race, maybe 16 depending on pace. It's going to be a close fought affair, but one thing we can say, at least in the early stages of the race, is that it is about settling down, finding rhythm and position here in the World Pro Racing Sprint Series finale here, powered by ESTV at Mount Panorama, Bathurst. Kieran, find a rhythm, stay calm, and effectively, after 3 laps, reassess the situation.
It sounds like a plan, doesn't it? It's almost like a plan could come together coming into tonight's racing action. But yes, the narrow walls, as we've already alluded to countless times, they are just ominously waiting to capture the next bit of carbon fibre, the next bit of virtual carbon fibre to take home with them. It is not a difficult track to really end your race very, very quickly. It is very harsh and unforgiving. And that's the beauty of Mount Panorama, is that it is unforgiving. It is narrow. And not only are you relying on yourself not to make any mistakes, but you're also relying on other drivers to keep it clean as well and keep it out of the walls. There's nothing worse than when you're trying to follow a car who then gets it wrong at, say, the Dipper, where there really is nowhere else to go other than the racing line. It's going to be that added challenge to have not only faith in yourself, but in the drivers as well. And as Luke Whitehead lines up on pole position in his Honda, he knows all he can do today is get the 2 wins. He's then relying on Amedeo Castorino to do the rest. But for Amedeo Castorino, 3rd place on the grid for him. This should be a very interesting concept. We'll see how they go when they head to Hell Corner.
We certainly will. And the lights just starting to creep on from a couple of drivers here and there. Sebastian Apostol turning on his lights in the BMW M6. And we'll be looking to try and make something happen out there over the course of racing today. But now is the time where drivers get their last preparations in. How much fuel do I need to put in the car? How much do I need to understand as they now take that drive and go on their pace lap then for the entire lap around this circuit? They'll get a feeling for what this circuit's made of. There'll be a couple laps before they get those tyres fully into an operating window and temperature, but it is all about now just getting through the final motions. It's effectively a sight a lap around this circuit to go, this is what each corner looks like. This is where I want to go out there and attack over the course of the racing.
Yeah, this is your last chance, really, to get the sighter laps in, but it's also the critical opportunity to warm the tyres and the brakes. You don't want cold brakes heading to Hell Corner. You also, importantly, on the run up towards Quarry Bend here, just as you've gone through the mountain straight, to not have the brakes here. This is going to be an action zone as well, especially on the very first lap. You're going to have drivers who want to be brave and chuck a lot of speed in towards Quarry Bend because it is uphill. So in theory you can brake just that slight bit later. And then as we head our way in towards the cutting, that double left-hander, the double apex left-hander, which tightens only as you progress through it, in towards the eventual left-hander of the cutting. And again, it's very narrow there. There's barely room for one car, let alone two cars going side by side, and that's the beauty, that's the charm here at Bathurst.
Yeah, Bathurst is one of those very unique circuits out there. We've had all sorts. We've had kangaroos visit the racetrack. We've had echidnas out on circuit before around this place, and we've also had great racing bring itself through many a time before and many a time since. Well, since ever, it will always bring great racing out there. Just trying to get the heat warmed up into the tyres there for some certain drivers out then on track, and heat's going to be very important to keep in these conditions. 6:12 p.m. They know that the light is starting to fade, so the one thing they absolutely are going to want is heat in the tyres. Because the track, look at the track temperature, it's dropped down by a case of about 4 degrees since qualifying, so very different conditions to what they were driving with, and 4 degrees doesn't sound like much on a track temperature drop, but you notice 4 degrees. It's the difference between turning in and having grip and turning in and not.
Yeah, it's a very stark difference once you get behind the cockpit as well. We are looking at the forecast. They're expecting it to remain dry for this race, so that will be one thing the drivers can put to bed, is that there isn't a risk of rain as of yet, as we've got the half-hourly forecast just in that top right-hand corner when it appears on the graphics again, and you'll see dry weather is predicted throughout this race. Still, no idea about race 2. We'll figure that out when we get there, of course. That's the beauty of it as well, not knowing the forecast until we're on the pace laps. It is a bit of a challenge for the drivers because they then have to adjust themselves, and as you say, a lower track temperature is something the drivers will have spotted and will try to adapt as we head through this end of the pace lap. Then Luke Whitehead will lead the field up in towards that 2x2 formation they'll eventually have to take before they take the start of this race, but only a few corners to go. And as you see, lots of weaving, well, not lots of weaving left and right. Most drivers actually choosing the Kimi Räikkönen at Abu Dhabi tyre warming technique of going absolutely straight line.
Yep, don't put any more additional wear into the tyres out there on track. You're going to need all of it. You're going to need to use it for all 30 minutes. Why would you use it up on the pace lap? That'll be some of the understanding. They will line up too wide out of the chase as they make the run under the Liquimoli Bridge towards Murray's Corner, which ends the lap outright, and then the all-important final corner, which starts off 30 minutes, its first race of 2. Castorino, if he wants to end this a race early, is going to have to score 2 more points than Luke Whitehead is at this moment in time. This is not a guarantee for all these drivers that the championship's decided at this first race of 2. They will wait for the green flag to drop. Luke Whitehead on that inside will be able to cover as they go through. They wait for the start line, of course, and a drive-through penalty for Edwin Law for jumping the start. Green flags in the air. We're racing from Mount Panorama. Sebastian Apostol will go to the outside. Troubles in the middle of the field with one of the BMWs there going through. It looks like Kirsten Beher taking just to the inside, but Whitehead gets a nice run, but he's going to be under pressure because there's a lot of grunt in those BMWs trying to find their way through, and it is going to be Amadeo Castorino on the outside trying to look through up into Griffin's Bend for the Quarry Corner for the first time, and through the Quarry Corner, on the exit of the Quarry Corner, it will be Apostol moving to the outside of the cutting and taking the race lead.
Brilliant move from that's brilliant from the BMW of Sebastian Apostol there. Got a good start, just put the pressure on, and now the armada of BMWs here are really chasing down Luke Whitehead. It really is an army of them, 6 of them behind him at that start. But look at Sebastian Apostel now, trying to build that gap as much as possible as we head our way through Solomon Park. The drivers all following their way through. Yeah, it looked like Kirsten Abeya at the start there. There's carnage in the background as well. We just cut away from it further down the field. Looks like there might have been a slight blockage in the track, as we see there Edwin Law getting that drive-through penalty as well. But that's going to really split the field in twain. But Apostel leads from Whitehead, Castorino in third.
One thing you don't want to do is go too wide up the mountain on the opening lap. Brandon Mikolev has been caught up in the 911 Porsche. Asker Langley Shikanami in trouble as well. And the number 3 Ferrari way down the order. Troubles there for one of the Mercedes there. That might have been John Agius there, who was slow through that section of road. So there are troubles up and down the order as they go through. But on the brakes then, they hit the chase and now exit the chase for the first time. Sebastian Apostel, your leader. Luke Whitehead in second. And Amadeo Castorino, remember, is only going to need 2 points out here. And if he can get himself past Luke Whitehead, he gets all the points that he needs. Whitehead defends vigilantly to the inside. It's the number 59 in trouble there. So that will be Audi de Vanagraha's Aston Martin that's in trouble down at the bottom. But let's take a look at what happened then on the opening lap. It was around Kirsten Abeja, and this is exactly where it goes wrong on the mountain.
Having a look at the cameras then as they go too wide up the mountain there, and contact there between the BMW and the Mercedes, and yeah, that just covers everybody up. It's almost like I predicted that, wasn't it? You know, you're relying on other drivers as well as yourself to keep it clean and not cause a bit of a track blockage. That's exactly what happened there. And for Kirsten Abeya, you know, he was heading down in towards turn 1, and Jack Alexander has managed to find a way past Amadeo Castorino up into third, but he's kissed the wall there as well. As we cut to a replay, we're watching on with Edwin Law. This was Bernard Bonello who might have been involved the elbow here, and yet that's a tap from Edwin Law that sent Bernard Bonello around. And oh yeah, just a bit of a constantina as well, was drivers tried to find their way through. But there is Jack Alexander. He's put himself up into third place. Oscar Saristo now up into 8th place in that Sun Energy Mercedes. And there is Bernard Bonello, who has a foul of the Forest's elbow, now pits in, and I assume he might be taken to the track once again. Hopefully he will, as Sebastian Apostel then 1.3 seconds ahead of Luke Whitehead, and then it's Jack Alexander in third and Amadeo Castorino rounding off the top 4.
Well, what's telling, and this is for top 7, keep an eye on this, Dylan de Bono in trouble, Brandon Bonello in trouble. So for Daniel Stromae, he's going to jump up. So a 5-second time penalty for car 32 out there on circuit. So that's Edwin Law, who had his drive-through penalty, but now will get an extra 5 seconds added on top of that. But you also have to keep in mind the championship battles that are up and down the order. Bernard Bonello was 7th going through. 30 seconds stop and hold for John Agius as they come out right in front of the race leaders out then on circuit. So with Dylan de Bono in trouble, Bernard Bonello in trouble, free kick for Daniel Stromae. He might be making some money out of this series.
He might be indeed, and the races will be passing through now, and they'll be hoping that those drivers will be listening and looking at the blue flags as Apostel tries to make his way through the traffic, then flash of the lights as well as he tries to make his way through. Oh, gets it all out of shape, then manages to gather it up with a kiss of the wall for good measure, and keeps a hold of the lead. Wow, that could have ended in completely another way, but well held, Mr. Apostel.
And Amadeo Castorino is dropping places because that's Nikolai who's gone through. Victor Nikolai's made the move, and there's contact up the top of the hill, and Whitehead's got into the back of the lap traffic, and that is big. That is big in terms of this circuit. This is big in terms of this championship, and that may be the moment that decides the season.
Yeah, it's John Agius who got a bit of contact there with Luke Whitehead and is trying to make his way back around. But there's Victor Nikolai. Nikolai is around as well. He's managed to drive back up the circuit. Not normally the way forward, but it's certainly just the way to get out of the way, not cause that blockage, as race control are going to be a bit busy tonight, so it seems. And now car number 20 has a 10-second penalty for an unsafe release, and that's going to be Bernard Bonello who's got that penalty.
Yeah, the stewarding team, they'll have a lot to look at out there at the point. I wonder how the stewards are going to look at contact between lap traffic. Oh, big off!
Saristo!
That's a massive off, and you're right, that is Oscar Saristo in trouble going through the fastest corner in Australian sim racing.
Wow, it's not the first car we've seen lose the back end completely there, and by the looks of it, it will not be the last. And yeah, absolutely, you're right, Jay. Castorino has damage. This is one of the most hectic races we've seen all season, and we've barely had 10 minutes.
That would have been the contact with Nikolai then, so that's important here. We don't quite know what happened. We know that Nikolai was pointing the wrong way, and we knew that Amedeo Castorino was pointing the wrong direction. What we don't know is whether those two came together, or maybe it was earlier with Jack Alexander, for example, where Amedeo Castorino ran into trouble. So there's a lot going on. Daniel Stramer, by the way, is up into 7th. Daskalescu now in 8th. Saristo is in the pits in 9th, which will promote Szymon Vajarek. Where do you want to look over the opening 10 minutes of this race? This is big. So this is what happens with Saristo. Gets to the inside. Oh, he's just bottoming out. The rears are bottoming out there. It's compression damping.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of afters as well, with one of the BMWs completely an innocent bystander in that, but Saristo had absolutely no control of that one either. But yeah, Saristo hitting the wall and hitting it hard, as you say. Meanwhile, Apostle has managed to try and just get himself up the road, as Vosaric and Law going side by side, then Law having the inside line, and as we head our way in towards Quarry Bend, there's contact with them as well, as Vosaric manages to keep it out of the wall. Fair play to him there, as Edwin Law holds the position, but that's going to be Vosaric down into 10th place. He will not be best pleased with that.
No, he won't, but you have to say Edwin Law earned the right to be on the inside there, and Vajarek turned as if he wasn't there. So Szymon Vajarek, very lucky to still have a car in this one, but he'll be out there going. Dylan De Bono, by the way, in 18th position. He's got a lot of work to do to get back into this race, but this is the sort of race where you can. Gergely Conchavo in 12th position right now in the Mercedes, and 12th, surprisingly, for someone in 6th position overall, might be enough today with the way this first race has gone. But Sebastian Apostol, your race leader, and clear by 2.5 seconds at the front of this field. Now let's dissect a lot of what's happened here. So this is what happens coming down the hill. This is what happens to Nikolai out there. And it's a heavy hit with the traffic, nowhere to go. Getting caught in it is Amedeo Castorino. That you're a passenger for. There's nothing you can do. And the Porsche there, of I believe it was Mikolev, then gets involved with a big issue down the hill at Brock Skyline.
Yeah, and again, it's the other drivers, completely innocent bystanders, being caught up in Mikolev's loss of control as Nikolai is into the pits and now all the way down in 16th place. It has been a race of attrition so far in terms of keeping it out of the wall, but Apostle at the moment 2.5 seconds up the road from Whitehead. Then it's Jack Alexander in 3rd, and then it's Alan rounding off the top 4 in the number 2, 2, 3. That's Joshua Allen. Then it's Wojciech Neuwirth in 5th. Castorino is in 6th. Stramer in 7th, with Daskalescu in 8th. Edwin Law in 9th, but with the 5-second penalty. And Szymon Vosaric rounding off the top 10, although Law and Vosaric are now both into the pits.
Yeah, they are, so they'll all have to take their stops, and with Edwin Law in the pits, he will take his 5-second stop and hold penalty while he is down in there. Otherwise, it is taken after the checkered flag for final results. Now, Luke Whitehead finds himself 2nd overall in this race. That's 55 points he'd be added on, as there is Edwin Law in the pits. There's also the Porsche of Mikolev down there in the pits as well. But with Castorino in 6th position overall, he'll be scoring 38 points. So that's a 17-point swing out there at this moment in time, and those 17 points takes a 58-point championship lead down to a 41-point championship lead coming into the final race, which would, in essence, if a race victory is 60 points overall, mean that 19th place will be enough. And funnily enough, there are only 19 drivers here today, which would effectively mean a retirement for Castorino in race 2.
But I'm sure he won't want to decide it by retirement in race 2. He'll want to decide it out on track no matter what. So as Luke Whitehead now, the fastest driver out on track, 2.2 seconds behind now is he to Apostle. So he's taken 3/10 off since we last spoke. And Jack Alexander in 3rd place. He's 4 seconds behind this lead battle. But it seems to be now that Luke Whitehead starting to find that rhythm once again. And these two, no doubt, are the quickest drivers we've got here tonight. And it's 2.4 seconds now between them. It'd be great to see them just slightly closer and give it another little battle there. But for Apostle, that's the last thing he wants. He's clear at the moment and doing a fine job. And, you know, they say about the curse of the commentator, let's hope it doesn't appear now. Please, Sebastian, prove that wrong. Prove that theory wrong.
Well, the more you ask for it, the more likely it will happen. Down. Oh, there's contact. That's Whitehead in the wall, going through. He was chasing so hard down. Sebastian Apostle, and Luke Whitehead finds the barriers then through the S's section. He may have got away with it with contact to the rear, but if there is any suspension damage, he will have to come down into the pit.
That is massive there for Luke Whitehead, and it was just going in towards, I believe that was in towards Skyline there. He just took too much speed through, picked up some grass, and once you do that, you are a passenger at that rate. And Luke Whitehead, in fairness, did a fine job to make that less than it could have been, much better than it could have been. Daniel Stramer, meanwhile, is trying to chase down Amedeo Castorino, and for a race that, for Luke Whitehead, he needs to take advantage of this as much as possible, because Castorino is wounded, his car is wounded, he will be losing time, and he might be losing a couple of positions. This is not the race that Luke Whitehead wanted, and how much damage has that Honda got with the kiss, with the barrier? In fact, it was more than a kiss, it was a full-on snog, wasn't it, with the barrier? Really, really hit it with some oomph. Daniel Stramer, meanwhile, really closing in to the back of Amedeo Castorino in towards the final corner. You can see Castorino is struggling. That car is damaged and he's losing a lot of time.
John Agius then in the pits, and that's no good for the number 87 out there, getting repairs, but to get back out and going again. So at this moment, Sebastian Apostle, 4.3 seconds. I think Whitehead understands that there's damage here for Amedeo Castorino, and I think that's why he was pushing, because if he could get to Apostle, put an extra 5 points on the board, makes his life a lot easier in the second race, knowing that Castorino's in a little bit of trouble. Daniel Stramer will want to get through, and Stramer making an overtake is rather important, because the difference between 6th and 7th place points out there today is a further 2 points. So that for Daniel Stramer is key, because he is also looking to cement himself with a top 7 position in this championship. Let's take a look then at where it goes wrong. So over the curb, he's nice and calm here, is Luke Whitehead. But as he comes over to the right-hand side, he's looking to try and take as much track as possible. Comes over the hill, moves down the right. He's okay for the moment, but here's the trouble. He's too narrow on that inside, completely cuts the inside of the corner. There's nowhere to abandon ship from that point. And then bang, the first contact on the inside, nowhere to go. Bigger bang on the outside, front and rear contact into the barriers. But somehow the Honda holds up, which is a sight to hold for what is Japanese engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been there as a driver. As soon as you get that little bit wrong going through Skyline and the S is there, you are a passenger, and it's the worst feeling in the world as Daniel Stramer streams his way past Amedeo Castorino to move himself up into 6th place, with a possibility then the next car still 12 seconds up the road. Castorino's not done with this, actually. He might have a wounded car, but he still has the fighting spirit, looking to go to the inside, switches then to the outside. He may have a wounded car, but that fighting spirit is far from wounded. It's been really challenged here today as they head down the start-finish straight. Look at this, Castorino's all over the back of Stramer as he tries to find a way through. Can't find a way through in towards Hell's Corner, and now back onto the power we go. This is unfortunately where Castorino is going to struggle. That front damage is really hampering the top speed of that BMW.
It has also brought in Cyprian Dascalescu trying to make the move, and there's no harm in the top end of Daskalescu's machine trying to go to the outside. In the cornering, you can still hold something similar when you know how far you need to go on the power. That's where Amedeo Castorino is going to have the advantage in the corners compared to everyone he's racing against. His issue is going to be top speed, and that is the big one. The top speed, not as much there in the engine. Of course, the bonnet just propped up a little bit as they run up through Reed Park and now settling down the hill through the metal grate section. And look at all of the downforce that's gone from the front there of that BMW. The Aston Martin's just happy to sit and wait for that big long run come up in the next couple of moments.
Yeah, he knows that as well, just trying to find the weakness of the car, and for Castorino it is top speed, as you know, it's the aero as well is taking a big hit, but with the narrow nature of the circuit, Castorino try and hold cars back. But as you say, this is where Daskalescu here will have a huge advantage. He'll have the slipstream, he'll have the much higher top speed. It's just a case of where he wants to get this move done, as now you'll see the Aston Martin should be closing it, although in fairness though, Castorino's using that slipstream from the Ferrari traffic in front to sort of keep him at arm's length from Daskalescu. But braking there, Daskalescu almost getting it all out of shape as the Ferrari pulled to one side to allow the battling duo through for 7th place. And again, Daskalescu here, I'll have to just have a system reset ready to go again as they make their way in towards Murray's Corner onto the pit straight.
Yeah, that was Simon Vajarek who was letting them through, 2 laps down in 13th, so there's not much further that Amedeo Castorino can essentially fall in a race like this today, where it has been troublesome off of the start of this one. It's your double-header series finale here with World Pro Racing. If you haven't already, like, share and subscribe, as here comes Ciprian Daskalescu to the outside once again. Should have the overlap when he hits the brakes, turning in, cuts the nose off of the BMW that's wounded and limping behind, and the position then is very much made as the number 16 machine moves up into 7th position, climbing the mountain.
Yeah, it wasn't as straightforward a move as Daskalescu may have liked, because he really had to chop in there and try and take that racing line with some vigour. But boy, did he take it, and boy, has he now got that position up and made. He can now try and start to make inroads on Daniel Stromae for 6th place. Castorino right now will be hoping and looking for a better race too. At the moment it's 8th place. Not sure of the gap between himself and Oscar Saristo, but when we get that gap, it's going to be quite a sizable one. If he can anchor down 8th place after the race he's had, that's not the worst thing in the world, but he'll be hoping for a much better race too.
I can tell you from the mini-map how big that gap is. It's half a lap. Saristo's only making his way to the cutting right now, which just shows you how everyone's been in a bit of trouble. 50 seconds he's got in terms of a gap. He's got 11 minutes to hold a gap of 50 seconds, which even when you're damaged as much as he is, I doubt that we're going to see that gap eroded by that rate out there on circuit. So he's got 8th place. As long as he doesn't do anything silly, he's got that 8th place in the back pocket. A driver I haven't really seen too much of today, who does need to deserve some credit, is Wojtek Neuwirth. He's up in 5th position at this point in time. Came into today 3rd in the championship. Yes, as things stand, he is going to be a little bit further back. He'll be into 4th position in the championship, but he is securing that 4th position in the championship in a BMW that is masquerading as an Aston Martin.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Aston Martin enjoys BMW. Yeah, it makes sense. Just make it make sense. Yeah, 5th place at the moment and 1.3 behind Joshua Allen in that battle for P4. And for Wojtek Neuwirth, he knows that points will mean prizes at this rate. If he can grab a couple of extra ones towards the end of this race, that will do his chance of finishing up in the prize pool no harm whatsoever. Just over 10 minutes of this race to go. And it might be easier, Jake, to give everyone a list of what's not happening. It might be a shorter list.
Sebastian Apostol's got into no troubles. He leads this race. Jack Alexander's in 3rd. He hasn't had any troubles. In 4th position is Joshua Allen. He's had no troubles, nor has Wojtek Neuwirth in 5th position. You could say Stromae in 6th and Daskalescu in 7th haven't had troubles. That's it. 6 drivers have got okay today. Everyone else has had a moment. somewhere on circuit. Luke Whitehead's found the barriers and found the lap traffic out there today. You've had the likes of Amedeo Castorino, your championship leader, get in trouble with Mikolev and also in trouble with Nikolai out there on circuit. It's been a tough race out there for a lot, but this is just ticking off the laps right now for Sebastian Apostol, who he in his charge, the second overall in the championship. Remembering here, Kieran, that he missed the opening round at Spa, you know, he's only back right now by 11 points.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable, really. It just shows you the consistency that when he has been here, that he's able to get those really high, consistent points. I mean, it just clearly goes to show that he has been a great, a driver in a great amount of form when he's on the track.
He has, and it's really proven with the way that he's driving here in this BMW, up the hill once again, going through the right and the left at Reed Park, and now just trying to get as much drive through this section. You miss almost the opening half as you go through the second. There is second position, and Luke Whitehead, he's got about a 3.6 second margin over who's behind in Alexander, and that's going to be the big key here for Luke Whitehead, just trying to manage the gap over to the BMW. The car directly behind him is one of the Mercedes, so he won't be worried about that. He's got lap traffic in the middle of the way. Neuwirth, by the way, he's within a second now of Joshua Allen, so we've got a race on for fourth position, and it might be big for Neuwirth's point.
Might be indeed, as I've been trying to basically scratch together a provisional if it were to finish like this standings, and well, Amedeo Castorino would be on 319 points. Luke Whitehead would right now be on 282. So that's the level, that's the field of play as we head into these closing stages. That's a gap of 37 points right now. So that means that all would be decided in that final race. And I mean, it took me that long maths to work that out. So that's pretty good for me, Jake. I think you'll agree.
That is, it would mean that it would be 17th or higher wins the race outright then, or wins the season outright in the final race for one championship leader, Amedeo Castorino. There is Wojtek Neuwirth, and he does have eyes on that BMW. Looks a little bit scraped at the front there, does Josh Allen's machine, and he'll be looking to run away like he's a certain other Josh Allen who plays for the Buffalo Bills.
That's a very good reference, a very obscure reference for my book, so well played. It would actually mean, though, if it were to finish like this, we would have 4 drivers technically still in the running for the championship. You'd have Amedeo Castorino as the leader, Luke Whitehead would run into second place, Sebastian Apostol would be on 270 points, and then you would have Wojtek Neuwirth on 251, just about inside that 60-point buffer going into the final race. But hey, you've got to be in it to have a chance to win it.
You absolutely do, and the proof is there. Amedeo Castorino has built up his margin over the course of this season so far, and when he's needed to use it, this is the sort of place where, yeah, you kind of need to use it, Kieran.
Yeah, you do. I've actually just checked my maths. Wojtek Neuwirth here would actually need just a couple more positions if he wants to keep his championship hopes alive. So he's got to try and find a way past Joshua Allen for now and see if that's going to be enough to take him to that sort of last race in just, well, straight really after this one we decide the championship. But at the moment it's actually 3 drivers going into it. But I have to say, Sebastian Apostol right now in the lead, 7.8 ahead of Luke Whitehead. I mean, yes, there's damage to Luke Whitehead's car, but take nothing away. He's one of the quick drivers here, is Sebastian Apostol. He got a qualifying time under 2 minutes, the same as Luke Whitehead there. Only about 3/10 separated them in qualifying, and at the moment, it's all heading Apostol's way in terms of a race victory.
It is in terms of that. The Neuwirth battle getting a little bit closer, but not close enough just yet. A bit of traffic then for Sebastian Apostol to jump onto next. That will be Gergely Conchabo and the number 90 a Mercedes AMG out there, GT3. So that will be at least half the field lap in this half-an-hour race. And we haven't actually got to say that too much over the course of this season, that drivers have got lapped. But this is the sort of place where it does show the gaps. a lot larger than other tracks out there. Tracks that are more wide, less margin for error. You can get away with mistakes, drivers feel more comfortable, and you get fields that are a lot closer. A place like here is probably the most, I would say, shining light for why street circuits are so loved and why more races at the higher level are going to street circuits more rather than seeing more racetracks being built, per se.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's one of the tough circuits out there. It's where we've been before to Alton Park, which is very narrow. You still have a sizable amount of runoff areas, albeit grass, but somewhere you can recover a mistake. When you head to the middle section of Mount Panorama, there is no such thing. Yeah, Edwin Law, you're right, he is in trouble just on the mini-map there, and obviously that's a part of the track where it's very narrow, not only to get your car righted, but also for everybody else passing through. So Edwin Law in that trouble and might be starting to drop the field as well. But we're watching on with Kurgli Kunsabo as he makes his way in towards the chase, and as you said, Sebastian Apostel is just closing in behind him. Might even use a little bit of his slipstream. The Mercedes punching a hole through the air for Sebastian Apostel.
Very much might do. And when they cross the line, they will have 2 laps to go here from Mount Panorama in Bathurst. The blue flag will be waved to say, hey, just to let you know, there is some lap traffic there behind you, which is trying to find its way through. It is a guaranteed 2 laps to go, with just how late through was about 3 minutes 40 odd seconds when they crossed the line. So Sebastian Apostel has an easy job. In terms of Wojtek Neuwirth's work, the gap has extended out to 1.7 seconds, so no reason to look back there. That battle looks to be all but secured out there over the course of the racing. But for Apostel, his chase of 2nd position overall, he'll only need 11 points if it stays like this. An 11 point out there in that final race is not much in terms of a difference maker here, Kieran. 11 points is the difference between 1st and 4th. It's 10 points difference between 1st and 3rd. So you're looking at it going, well, okay, you need 3 places essentially if you can find another victory again. That's not impossible.
Not impossible, but if you have to say not impossible, that's not exactly the brightest look at it, but you're right, it's not impossible, so that means it is still a chance. Jack Alexander as well, the Flying Scotsman, currently 3rd place, 2.2 behind Luke Whitehead, but he's built a gap to Joshua Allen, and in that West Competition Racing BMW has looked on rails today. As you said before, he's one of the drivers that really nothing's happened to him. That's why he's been able to have such consistent pace. He's managed to keep himself to himself and is at the moment holding on to that last podium spot.
One of these days, someone's going to create a sim racing team, and they're going to have it as an endurance team. There'll be 1 Scot driver, 1 Finnish driver, and 1 Dutch driver, and they're all going to be the flying team. Either way, it's going to be one of those races for Jack Alexander where he'll get a lot of confidence, I think, out of it. He's close to Luke Whitehead. He's seeing that he's just pushed slightly wide. But Jack Alexander, this is the sort of drive that just gives you confidence. You kept it out of trouble for 30 minutes. And you're going to jump onto a podium as Dylan de Bono gets a 5-second time penalty for track limit.
Yeah, well, Jack Alexander, the Flying Scotsman. Well, we have Oscar Saristo, so there's your Finnish driver. We just need a Dutch driver now.
Yeah, we just need a Flying Dutchman.
Yeah, I can't think of many Flying Dutchmen. No, none come to mind. I'm only joking. Incident between car number 32 and 517. That's a car 517 getting that penalty. So that's going to be Dylan de Bono for a dangerous move under blue flags.
Yeah, that would be with Edwin Law then. And that's why we saw Law around, or we didn't see Law around, but we saw on the mini-map that Edwin Law was around on circuit up over at McPhillamy Park. So that's the trouble there that we can note, and that's why the 5-second time penalty is in on the books. Alexander still giving chase, gap 1.8 seconds, but there is Sebastian Apostel up then at the highest point of this Mount Panorama circuit. Will take the flick right and descend down through the S's for the final time in this opening race of 2 tonight. We can confirm the championship will head to the final race, and for Sebastian Apostel, as he dips down the hill, he knows that he still has an opportunity to put car 21 in a little bit of trouble in that second race. He's keeping a lot of people honest here, Sebastian Apostol, and you wonder if he turned up at Spa-Francorchamps, just how close he would have been to Amedeo Castorino. But for the Romanian, as he hits the brakes at the chase and looks through the left and then following on from that the right, he will know that it is a big victory in his back pocket, and he has done everything he's needed to in this opening race. He took the lead at turn 3, he never looked back. Sebastian Apostol wins race 1 here tonight at Mount Panorama, and Luke Whitehead will bring the gap down to Amedeo Castorino and keep the championship alive.
Yeah, second place there for Luke Whitehead, and Jack Alexander, the Scotsman, finishing off a pretty impressive podium showing for the Scotsman. Joshua Allen, another Scotsman, across the line in 4th place in that West competition BMW. Wojciech Neuwirth in the Aston Martin Enjoyers BMW, finishing in 5th place. That does mean now mathematically he is out of the title running, but he's still in with a shout of finishing well inside that prize pool, and his focus will now turn to that. Daniel Stromae then coming across the line to take 6th place in the first race of the evening. Ciprian Descalescu across the line in 7th place, and there is a very heftily wounded Amedeo Castorino who will come across the line in 8th place. The championship gap does come down, but it does still heavily favour Amedeo Castorino.
It does. The last finisher will be Oscar Sari, still on the leading lap, all the way back in 9th position. And in fact, we will reach the zeros mark out there in terms of get everyone over to the line. So Saristo will have to charge in the late stages to get over and home. But really a race of attrition, and a lot of drivers getting caught out and put in troubles, needing damage repaired.
Mela tinsewniex, eSports Plus.